Hello, everybody. Hope everyone is having a wonderful morning so far. So I am here to have a conversation with you about, People Analytics 101, discovering your HR superpower. So quick question for those of you who are out there. If HR did have a superpower, what would it be? Relationships?
Reading your mind.
Mind read. Well, that could go either way. Empathy, wonderful, wonderful superpowers. I was giving this a little bit of thought as well, and I was maybe thinking about it a little bit differently. What if HR had X-ray vision? The ability to see quickly through a situation to understand what is at the heart of the matter. Or lightning speed. I mean, who wouldn't want to be able to get work off their desks more quickly? Or this is actually a superpower I think most people believe we already have. Super hearing. How about the ability to put your ear to the ground and to hear what's going on within the organization? What are those things that people aren't saying or saying quietly? And how does that affect the ability to be able to work and perform in the workplace? Future vision. Being able to see around those corners, being able to understand what's coming down the pathway so that you can get ahead of dealing with it. So stay with me here. But I do think that data is your superpower. Okay, some sighs and some eye rolling, but let's stick with this. As I was thinking about superheroes to maybe model this conversation off of, I thought of this guy here. Anyone know who he is? Iron Man, yes, one of my favorites, perhaps because he's played by Robert Downey Jr. But nevertheless, Iron Man. He has lots of strengths, right? I mean, he can fly, he's strong, he can think quickly. But at the end of the day, he has a human inside of him. All of that technology works because there's a human that's managing it. Now, granted, a very wealthy, very intelligent human, but nevertheless a human. So what I thought I would do today is walk through a couple of use cases and ways that we've worked with organizations to understand what their data is telling them about their workforce. I'll talk about 3 different scenarios, one where data is used to be able to understand the effectiveness of a HR program. We'll talk about how data is used to help support talent outcomes, as well as how data is being used to support business outcomes. And this is where it gets super exciting, you're going to be able to try some of these on for size, and we'll walk through a guided case study where I'll share some data and you'll be able to provide some of your thinking about how we want to be thinking about it. Sound good? Yeah. All right. In this first case study, this is a commercial aviation company. They were concerned with the challenge of turnover. Any organizations here struggling with turnover despite the apparently low quit rates? So what they wanted to understand was how were employee pay decisions impacting their ability to retain some of their high-performing talent, or in other words, reduce turnover of that talent. What we learned in looking at their pay practices is during their annual review and promotion cycle, what we saw was that high-performing employees who received a promotion were getting paid less than 8% increase on their base salary. That is below their pay their pay policy. They should be getting a more significant increase. However, probably more disturbing was that what we found is that mid-performing employees who did not receive a promotion were receiving over 10% increase on their base salary. Now that's clearly above what the pay recommendations are. And more concerning is that we found that high-performing employees were turning over 20% if they were paid less than a 5% increase with their promotion during that period. So, outcome. One, just providing greater visibility into what was happening allowed them to understand where managers were not adhering to the pay policies and practices. And they were able to understand where that was having an impact on their ability to retain their top performing employees. The other thing that they were able to do was, using data, be able to justify being able to go and get some additional funds to improve the pay for some of those high-performing employees so that they could better retain them. But maybe more importantly, at the end of the day, is that they were able to really ensure that they were living by their cultural promise, which was to be a high-performing organization and to really embellish that culture. Okay, example number 2. This is a chemical company. They were having a challenge with diverse representation, and specifically diverse female representation in their leadership roles. Again, any organization struggling with this one? So what we found was that overall, this organization did a really good job in having equity in the way that they assessed performance among male and female employees. Their pay was actually pretty equitable as well. They were promoting women at actually a higher rate than men, but they were still having a problem being able to achieve their goals. And what we learned was that male managers were hiring male candidates 75% of the time, as compared to their female manager counterparts. So it's really hard to change the mix of representation within an organization if you're not bringing more of that group into the organization to start with. So with this data, they were able to understand specifically where some of that unconscious bias might be occurring so that they could have the appropriate actions in place to be able to change the tides. But the other thing is they were able to measure whether or not these changes that they implemented actually had long-standing effect. So they were able to continue to monitor over time what is happening. Oftentimes we do something, but then we don't measure it. And we don't know whether or not over time we're actually having the desired outcome. Okay, the last one is around business impact. So this organization is a high-tech manufacturing company. What they wanted to understand was, what is the optimal number of people that we should have on a production line to maximize productivity and quality? They had this underlying, they also had a high degree of turnover. And they had this underlying idea that people who were taking their time off were taking their time off to look for another job. So, what did we find? What we found was that in many cases, those lines that had more people on them were actually producing less. So they were paying more. If you think about what you pay to have an employee on a line, they're paying more for lower productivity, lower amounts of output. What was even more interesting was that employees who took their time off actually produced more in quantity, and they also had higher quality of output. The number one reason for employee turnover? Manager instability. So what did they do with this information? Well, one, they were able to improve their staffing plans so that they were able to ensure that they had the right number of people on the line to have maximum number of quality productivity. But two, they were also able to increase awareness with their managers that it's good for people to take their time off, which ultimately resulted in their ability to improve the wellness of their employees while also improving the outcomes for the business. And then finally, using data, they were able to identify those managers who are most at risk of leaving so that they could have better stay interviews and be able to get ahead of them turning over. So these were a couple of examples of ways in which data was used as a superpower to improve HR, talent, and business outcomes. Are you all ready to give this a whirl for yourselves? Wonderful. All right. I love the enthusiasm. Imagine that you are a brand new HR business partner supporting Reese Ellis. Reese Ellis is a senior vice president of IT in North America. He is in your initial meeting with him, he says, hey, I am really concerned about the high turnover rates. I think that they're above what we're seeing in the industry. But we have no shortage of applicants. There are lots of people applying to work here, even though I'm paying below market to have them come in. And I can do that because we have a very robust training program, lots of mentorship. It's really well known within the industry. And after 2 years, just to make sure people stay, once they've been onboarded, we give them a very significant pay increase. Takes about 9 months to fully onboard a new employee, get them up to productivity. But here's the thing. We have this big product that we're trying to release, and I'm afraid that we're not going to be able to meet those delivery dates because we don't have enough people to do the work. Okay, everyone got that? That's the scenario. All right, so first thing you do is you run down to your desk, and thankfully you have Visier, and you are able to understand whether or not is this really a problem? How are you comparing to the industry? If you look at that blue line there, that is the resignation rate for Ellis's people. Reese's he's saying their turnover rate's about 11.4. However, when you compare that to the industry benchmark, which is in the green, you're doing a little bit better than what the industry benchmark says. What do you want to do with this information? How do you think about this? What else might you want to know?
The people who are leaving, how long have they been there? What's the tenure?
Tenure, okay, very good. I think I heard maybe something about pay. All right, so let's take another look. Let's take a look at tenure. So overall, the retention rate average for 12 months is 10%. Those red bars represent where the turnover is higher than that 10%. And you can see it starts to go red at between 2 and 3 years. 2 and 3 years, that's exactly about the point in time when we understand that he's giving everybody a little bit of a promotion, right? They've just finished their training program. It gets much worse 3 to 5 years. But so these are team members that are now at their optimal level of productivity, right? All right. So why are they leaving? Well, this is the compa ratio for each of these who's leaving, and we can see that the compa ratio for anyone that might not be familiar with that word, 100% is the midpoint. So we can see here that people are leaving well above that midpoint, 110 to 120%. So we might be able to conclude that perhaps pay isn't the issue. All right, so what else might we want to look at? How about exit reasons? So for employees that are leaving between that 3 to 5 year range, the number one reason that they're saying that they're leaving is manager changes. So what might we think about that? Yeah, career, maybe, people are at that point, they want to see whether or not they're moving, or they have changes in the managers that they've been working with, that they've gotten to know. There might be something in there to unpack, right? What other insights would be helpful to complete this story? Training, other things that might be going on.
There's no growth for them.
Career mobility, excellent.
Living wage.
Representation, maybe engagement. How okay, they might be being paid well for their organization, but how does that compare to market? Wonderful. See, you guys are really exercising the superpower. So, how often are you doing this today? And what might be preventing you from doing this more frequently? Common trends seem to be access to information, the ability, the speed with which you're able to get your fingers on the right pieces of data, understanding what are the right questions to be asking and where to start. How do you start to overcome those things? And what does that look like with AI? How many of you have thought about AI when it comes to people analytics and what that might look like to really enable you to be able to get to that next level more quickly? See some head shaking? Yeah, I've become a huge fan of ChatGPT. So let me share with you what Visier's response to AI is. Oops, I think I may have gone one. Did I go one too far? Okay, we did test this earlier. It was working earlier. Here we go. Complete with sound effects and everything. So with data powered by AI, you truly could have that X-ray vision to be able to see through the noise and to the heart of the matter. You are able to access information much more quickly. You're able to put your ear to the ground and understand what might be happening, what am I not seeing, but what can I hear, what can I understand? And you can start to be able to see around some of those corners. Unleash your HR superpower. We are actually going to be headed to break, I believe, after this segment. Please feel free to stop by and see us at the Visier table. We'd love to speak with you about your data needs and maybe your data potential, and try a cape on for size, perhaps. But if you want to learn more about Visier, there's a QRC code here. If you'd like to connect with me, I'm always happy to have conversations offline about data or any other topic. So you can link in. Feel free to link in with me on that. And with that, thank you so much for your engagement today, and I really appreciate your participation. Enjoy the rest of the conference.